Today I'm answering your questions about vintage Star Wars action figures. And if I don't know it, I'm gonna research the heck out of it, and together we're gonna find the answers. Let's go. So welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the first episode of Vintage Q&A, where you leave your questions and I'll research and answer for you. So if you want to join next episode, just leave a question in the comments or when I post this picture to social media. So our first question comes from Danny Skywalker on YouTube, and Danny says, I feel like there isn't too much info on Lily Letty Star Wars figures out there, and I would love to see your take on that. So you're right, Danny, the info that's out there is kind of obscure, but there are some trusted sources that I go to when I need to reference Lily Letty right away. The first one is a website called the Imperial Gunnery, and they have a Lily Letty forum, a super detailed page, a little hard to navigate, and you have to know what you're looking for, but once you spend about 30 minutes on that website, you're going to be glad that you have it in your arsenal. And all of these links that I'm going to give you, make sure you bookmark them, and I'll try to leave a link for all of these in the description. And the second place that you're going to want to research Lily Letty Star Wars figures is the Variant Villain. This one has great info, but the main reason I like it is because how visually organized it is. It's easy to navigate. It has great photos. And obviously, I think the info is great, so I'll leave a link for that too. And some of these websites operate for free, so if there's a dono button, leave a few bucks as a thank you, especially if you go there multiple times a day or a week. And if you can't find the info that you're looking for, there's always the Vintage Star Wars Facebook groups, and I found one that's dedicated to Lily Letty. It's called Lily Letty Star Wars, so search for that one on Facebook, and since it's a private group, you're gonna have to be allowed in by answering a few questions. I Am the Sith asks, what figures still hold up today? They all do, but I asked him a follow-up question to clarify, and he was asking about design and how they compare to the designs of today. And I know that in our conversation, in our text conversation, you mentioned a squid head. And yeah, that's one. Another one off the top of my head is Jabba the Hutt. They keep on making new versions of Jabba, and I always go back to the original Kenner design and compare that one to new designs that they make, and there's nothing like the original Kenner designs. And I have to rule out anything with vinyl capes as holding up to today, because those were the first items to get outdated. Any lightsabers that were inside the arms, those are classic, but the accessories that the figure holds in the arm mold, those are the norm now. I would have to say the Imperial Gunner, the Imperial Commander, the AT-AT Commander, TIE Pilot, AT-AT Driver. You know, looking back there, the Gamorrean Guard holds up really well. IG-88, pretty much all of the droids, like C-3PO, like that one has really held up over time just because his design being so timeless. And I know there's so many others, like the Emperor's Royal Guard. That one in the vintage Kenner line just held up so good today. But if you guys want to add what your top 5 figures are that you think held up from the original Kenner line that still hold up in design today, let me know down there in the comments, because I would love to know what you guys think about that. So the next question, I know I'm going to say this wrong. Mental Lath. I'm just going to call you Mental. How many different characters have been made in all of the 3.75-inch Star Wars lines? Not repacks or repaints, just the number of characters. Thanks. That is a really good question. And I actually went to my collecting sheet and I did a tally, and I didn't include the updates like C-3PO with removable limbs or the number of Leias or Lukes that came out. And I also included Jabba the Hutt, Salacious, and things like the Wampa, Rancor, Reboban, Dewbacks, etc. And I didn't include Anakin because he and Vader are basically the same character. And I also included playset exclusive like the Blue Snaggletooth, the Dianoga Trash Monster, and the Probe Droid, the Probot. So the total comes out to 87 unique characters that Kenner did in the vintage line from 1977 or 1978 to 1985. And I say 1977 because the first 4 figures were produced in 1977. They just weren't released to the public in 1978. So always remember that. So if you guys do the tally and your number comes out to, what did I say, 87, let me know if your number is the same as mine. So this question comes from D.W. Fletch. It would be interesting to know the sales volumes of all the figures vehicles. You're right, it would be. I actually found references to the sales volumes on a website from Swansea University, home of the flying devil frogs. I'm just kidding. I don't know if there's even such thing as a devil frog. So on their website, they say, and I quote, by the end of 1978, Kenner had sold 42 million Star Wars toys. And by the time the last of the 100 original, now commonly referred to as vintage Kenner action figure line was released in 1985, an estimated 250 million had been sold. So I'm imagining it would be hard to get all of the retail sales numbers together, but you can do estimates, right? If an average figure sold for, let's just say, $2 in US currency back in 1985, times that by 250 million, so $500 million of figures sold, and that's a guesstimate. So now you convert that in today's money with inflation, and we get a staggering 1.4 billion in sales. But we're never going to know the true prices unless some super sleuths want to investigate all the retail outlets that got items shipped to them. So I think basing it on the items shipped to the stores is a safer bet, and it's probably a more realistic number. Benjamin Ray asks, at what point do you think the value of the vintage toys will start to decline, since most collectors are getting older and the younger generations will not have the nostalgic bond to the toys that many of us have? That's a great question, and one that I have actually wondered about. So this is what I think about that. In any collecting line, there is a generation 0, right? Where that phenomenon becomes popular. Then at generation 2 is usually where it starts picking up. And then when we get to gen 4, 5, and 6, by that time, usually the generation that found out about the trend, generation 0, by that time, they usually have sadly passed away, unless they are vampires and they're immortal. But usually, after the founding generation passes away, then it takes a couple of generations to see if it was a fad or not. So you take the oldest of these fads, and I'm going to exclude art collectors because that is way too broad. But if you take stamp collectors, coin collectors, baseball card collectors, comic book collectors, even car collectors, and now action figure collectors, and really action figure collecting is such a new phenomenon that we might have to wait at least 2 more generations, so even after we have passed, to see how it will affect the estimated value of a figure. So I would say in our lifetime, and even after a generation after we're gone, I don't think these Star Wars action figures are going to go down in value. And if we look historically, since 1985 when they stopped selling these retail, if you research prices from Bantha Tracks, which was a magazine that Star Wars collectors would read and get ideas of how much figures were selling for, and then when the internet was available, we got to see what collectors were buying and selling for. Historically, these numbers have crept up and have kept getting higher in value, or at least they keep getting up with inflation. And you look at other vintage toy lines around the same era, like G.I. Joe, Transformers, it was just a special time in toy history when those items changed the way that toys were made and marketed. But then you see toys that were made in the mid-90s and early 2000s, and in today's market, they're selling for basically the same price that they were sold for. I know there's exceptions, but the majority you can pretty much buy for the same price that they sold as retail. I mean, don't get me wrong, those figures still have a place in history, but they will never be as historically significant as the toy lines from the late 70s or the early 80s, especially Star Wars. Long answer, but it was a great question. So Mike Edwards asks, how can you clean your figures and accessories safely? Have a great day. Thanks, Mike, and I hope you're having a great day too, buddy. I hope you are all having a great day. Obviously, you have to take into account if they have stickers or not, because there is no way I am dipping an R2-D2 in water or getting anything on that figure wet whatsoever. So basically on the items with stickers, I'm just going to wipe down the areas that I can with alcohol-free and fragrance-free wipes. I have a brand that I recommend in the description of this video, but you can also find them on my website. But if stickers aren't an option, basically if there's no stickers on it, I just remove all the accessories if I can, like, you know, capes and all that stuff. And I put a drop of fragrance-free mild dish soap into a bowl of warm water. And then I get a soft bristle toothbrush. I dip that in the water, and then I give that a nice, easy brush. And then I let those figures air dry in what I like to call an action figure yoga pose. And when I'm drying them, I also keep them out of direct or indirect sunlight. And if you guys ever see my collection room, it's blacked out. I have an editing room that's blacked out. Basically, if it was up to me, my whole house would be blacked out. But it's not. So that's why I have my studio, my editing room, and Mrs. Padawan has her side of the house. But yeah, the main thing is just use your common sense when cleaning action figures, especially with figures like any of the droids, like a Power Droid, EV99, the figures that have compartments where water can get in and you can't really dry it or check to see if it's dry. And those figures over time can collect mold if they're not dried off properly. And over time, it actually degrades the plastic from the inside out. So just use common sense on what figures you are going to dip into water or clean with water. And sometimes it's just best to wipe down what you can see visually, whether you use a fiber-free cloth or the wipes that I suggested. Basically, it's just all common sense. Next up, Jared Reese asks, I want to know how you feel about restoring a ship with all original parts and getting replacement stickers for it. It had no stickers on it when I got it. I don't consider that supporting Repro. I actually love restoring vintage toys with original parts, and I did that with my Death Star space station when the original laser turret, the spring mechanics didn't work. A viewer gifted me with the parts to fix it, so I did. So I think that fixing your vintage collectibles with other vintage parts, I actually think that's amazing, and I think it's a really positive part of the hobby. As for the stickers, so here is where I fall with this, and this is what I follow for my collecting. And I know people who buy reproduction stickers for their vintage items, and that's the way that they complete their items. And first and foremost, I am a purist, and I want all the items with all of its original items and stickers included. So if an item came with missing stickers, I would rather get an item that's in better shape with all the stickers intact. And if there's an item that's missing all the stickers, I would rather find an unused sticker sheet and keep the sticker sheet intact, in the box or with the item itself, or just, frame it or whatever. But I would never take off vintage stickers and put them on a vintage item. And personally, this is my choice. If I had a vintage item like an X-Wing and it didn't have stickers, I wouldn't go buy reproduction stickers. That's just the way that I choose to have my collection. So it's really up to you on what you want to do for your collection. If you don't mind reproduction, that's fine. The only thing where it crosses the line for me is when you are going to sell your items and you don't disclose that. Right? Another thing is that, let's say you pass away and your family sells your collection, they don't know if it's reproduction. So that's where it's a slippery slope, at least for me. So if anybody is to resell my collection after I pass, it's safe to say, again, we can't be sure. A lot of the times, even in the most professional of collectors out there, they can't spot some reproduction items with their naked eye. So we don't know if our collection is reproduction or not. We try to keep it that way. But for me, I don't collect anything with reproduction items on it, reproduction stickers included. Like I said, others curate their collection differently, and I like to use that word curate because it's what we all do. So it's really your choice, but at least now you know mine. So thank you to all of you who sent in your questions. And for people who sent in questions and I did not get to them, just know that I'm going to use all of them in future episodes, so I will get to your questions. And even when I do live streams, I will answer as many questions as I can. And if you want to leave your comments for a future episode, just leave those right down in the comments. Or if you want to sign up to any of my social media, the links are in the description. And if you want to join my Patreon community or my YouTube community, I answer all of those questions first. And I thank anyone who supports my channel, even liking and subscribing to this channel. It helps out the channel greatly. So to everyone who supports me, I thank you. And please check out the videos that are on the screen now. And as always, my friends, thank you, and I will see you next time.
If you're new to the channel, check out the welcome video, or just check out the next episode. And please subscribe if you want to follow the journey. And remember, there is no shame in being a Padawan.